Now your great solo show Chronosphere is up at Kunsthall Oslo until the 9th of June, and even yesterday you opened in a group show at photographer Wolfgang Tillmann's Space Between Bridges in Berlin as part of the Kyiv Biennale. So things are definitely happening, which I'm really glad for and great to see. But I also had the impression that we're just seeing the beginning of things. And today we find ourselves in this planetarium, this place of looking into the universe, often through animated films shown here for like scientific and educational purposes, where you can suddenly move through space, planets and stars and satellites. But today we're so lucky that this 360 video drone is filled with excerpts from your work Chronosphere, that is from at Kunsthall Oslo. And that film is full of depictions of the Earth, for example, through this like hollowed Earth where the ocean areas are carved out and you can see like beneath the surface. And yeah, I'm curious to hear why you chose to situate this specific talk right here at the Planetarium. Lesia.
Thank you, Eirik, and thank you, Billedkunst, for inviting me for the talk, and thank you for people who joined today. I wanted to have a talk with you in a place that would somehow be related to the work, to my practice, and to my research. I'm very much involved in following up the latest developments of space technologies, and especially space observation technologies that use in photographic medium, an eye observation apparatus to observe and to document and to analyze the planet that we are sharing. So since very, very beginning of humankind, people were looking out to space and looking out at stars and trying to make a sense out what is called constellations. And today, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna touch upon another side of the word or the concept constellation, which is more like technologically based and neoliberal and political and very much weaponized. This is what I guess we're gonna be talking today about, this shift from looking out to looking back in.
Yeah, maybe you want to jump directly in and say something more about that. Obviously, the vertical perspective is of great interest to you. What is sort of I feel like the vertical perspective is a newer perspective in like human history terms, and it has been intensified a lot lately. Do you want say about your interest, or like what is the new thing coming out of that perspective and the consequences of it?
In my practice, I'm working a lot with media archaeology as a method of thinking about the world around me, and I'm often thinking about reality capturing technologies that have been even before the photographic apparatus. For example, magic lanterns, or even before camera obscura. Actually, the very beginning of horizontal perspective was this person, polymath and mathematician, great thinker. His name was Al-Hazan. He lived in Baghdad in around 1000. He lived half a century, 500 years before Newton. He was the person who actually wrote the first ever book of optics that Newton got inspired of 500 years after. And he was the person who actually built the first ever camera obscura. And this camera obscura, first ever camera obscura, was built for proving that the light travels in lines. Western countries started to explore the world. Before they started to use camera obscura to make pictures, images of the places they've been using. They were using just the drawings of how places look like, but then they miniaturized a camera obscura into portable version. And then these photographs, these images were made to measure the distances and to create this kind of cartographic systems. Camera obscura, the apparatus that become a photographic apparatus in the future, has completely 100% rooted origins in colonial practice. The colonization with the help of the camera obscura was like, it was all about like reaching the horizon. It was all about measuring the distance between the person and a horizon that's portrayed on the image. It was about expansion of a space, physical space. And I find like interesting to kind of draw the similarities between these methods and the history of colonization of space by the Western world with the current colonization of actual space that is happening around our planet, around Earth. It's not an actual space, but it's happening on low orbit.
But now we're starting to dig into both the atmosphere and different timelines from Islamic scientists until more recent European Enlightenment. Because, for example, your exhibition is called Chronosphere, which, if I'm right, is chronos, time, and sphere, space, atmosphere, if I'm slightly correct. So you're both interested in both space and time. And let's go more into the concept of time that interests you, because we have the more widespread concept of like deep time, which relates to some of the activities also in this building. So very massive timescales of planets, cosmic time with like history of billions of years, the Big Bang, creation of planets, like geological time, and often the deep time involves seeing ourselves within these timescales as a shift in perspective. You know, like how to relate to these scales and tempos with our conditioned life on this planet that we find ourselves within a year, Earth's orbit around the sun. We have a day of sunrise and dawn, and suddenly we have like the year 2024, the average life of a human being, and the consequences of 150 years of intensified emissions of greenhouse gases, the 8-hour work day, like different experiences between 2 hours of scrolling on your phone versus 2 hours, or insomnia or extreme fear or boredom. So I can't really pinpoint it, but it's for sure something strange about this concept of time. So like, what is the starting point for your exploring of different concepts of time, like the physical experiences of time, like, or more is it fundamentally to the concept of time that is important to you?
Before answering on like what I meant by the notion of chronosphere, by the speculative terminology I'm trying to develop through my practice, I want to go back to this notion of verticality and horizontality, because it has like very direct kind of link to why I actually trying to like develop some kind of terminology around technological temporalities and observation technologies. Today, what we kind of witnessing and what we part of is the extraction of data from the terrain, as data as a kind of like a new resource. And why it's a resource? Because this data is being extracted. There is no law to control who's extracting from what territory. There is no international laws that can protect any of the places from being like visualized through this satellite technologies. And also this data could be traded. Again, is before the colonization of space was happening like horizontally. Now you could see how the satellite technologies and this observation technologies, they operate like down in the vertical direction. And also what it could do, it could see through clouds, it could see through sand, it could see through forest and soil and the water. So it could go even like down than the surface that we're walking on. Chronosphere as a term, it comes in when I'm actually thinking about these different temporalities that are observed by these technologies that are like circling around the planet 24/7. And I'm thinking like what actually it sees, what's actually there. And this is where all of this kind of temporalities that you mentioned also kind of visible together simultaneously with, for example, a war that is unfolding, with a person walking on the street, with the forest like being chopped down, or with I don't know, like illegal extraction of lithium. So together with this kind of like human temporalities, day and night, season, like time, like deep time of like glaciers melting, or some cultures even disappearing because of the extractivism like ongoing all around the planet. At the same time, there is like all of these micro and macro scales of realities being captured by the technology that could not just see as like in a way that we use, like that camera sees stuff that is similar to our human vision, but it also could like see, not even, it's called remote sensing, okay? So it's not like, it's not optical technology anymore. It doesn't use the optical apparatus to see stuff. It's called remote sensing, and what it does, it's sensing the ground. And how it does it, it's for example, satellite could send like a great number of radar beams down to the ground, and it records the time it takes for each signal to come back. It also could sense on the way, for example, the temperature of the atmosphere. It could sense the moisture. It could sense the speed of the wind, and many other things that is completely out of human vision. And yeah, so this is where the chronosphere is coming in as a like speculative term. The starting point was Ukrainian scientists and much more, of course, Vladimir Vernadsky, who's among other thinkers developed the notion of noosphere, where he was saying that noosphere is the sphere of human thought that shapes the world, the sphere of human thought, consciousness, and thinking that shapes the earth. I wanted to add the temporal aspect of it, these temporalities that are shaping the earth. For example, the time of war, the time of anticipation when this war will end, the bombed fields that will take like hundreds of years to restore is also part of chronosphere. The colonial like histories and practices that are led for this single moment of like death that we witness in social media is also part of chronosphere. So it's this kind of like this combination of macro and micro, human and non-human, more than human temporalities that are synchronized, that are visible through this eye from above, and that are shaping our like reality and our planet Earth.
It's so fascinating in the Chronosphere work how you both blend so many different perspectives and forms of images. You have all these CGI images, machine learning created images, computer generated, or like game generators that, for example, made this whole bombed out field, and you have some live footage from drone operators in Ukraine, and it was interesting to get to know that you started out after being a journalist and moving image director in Ukraine, which I see that you are taking or building further upon in your practice. But when you came to Oslo, you studied photography at Oslo Photographic School, and you were talking about like the photographic optical images versus these new kinds of like satellite data images, which are something completely different. Would you say some more? I know you have some great thoughts to share about like how to understand these new kind of images versus like the traditional photographic one, either if it's analog or digital pixelized, and to this new form of images. Like how should we understand images made by these new technologies?
In the Chronosphere video, I tried to blend different different imagery that are present today in a media like landscape, through social media, news, or for example through video games, like any kind of imageries that I could think of that represent the current moment.
You also said something about seeing versus sensing in looking at or like understanding images. Would you say something about that, and you like sensing, or like also how we as humans should understand images that are out there now?
Yes, so photographic image from the very kind of beginning of its kind of existence was meant to kind of generate an information. And the first archive for photographs was made, for example, in Belgium, in prisons, where like people like sociologists were trying to collect the images of prisoners and see and kind of like if there is any pattern. And the question today is what we witnessing with what's happening in Gaza, in Ukraine, in other places where the death and violence is unfolding in front of our eyes. And every day we kind of scroll through like the worst image we've ever seen. Images is not about giving you information or the story anymore. It's not perceived like that. Or if it is, then it's a question of who's making the story, where it's published, on what platform, who reshared. What if we could like learn something from photography as a medium? What if to take this kind of like poetic notion of sensing and to apply it on the images we see? By sensing, I would like to also refer to the, for example, INSAR, or like interferometric synthetic aperture radar photography, which is satellite imagery that are representing, for example, a day as one image, a month as one image, 3 days as one image. So the image is longer than one moment, and it's within this image. And what if when we look at these photographs on the social media and photographs, images that surround us, what if we'll try to think them as more as a moment that is captured there? What if we will kind of like manage to train ourselves like on some cognitive even level to think about an image as everything that led to this image, and this speculative futurity of what's going to happen to this scene, to this person, to this situation, politically, socially, environmentally, after this image was taken. It's a question of perception, and it's totally opposite of this 1 second attention span that we're living in, you know?
And jumping back to what you said about working with different images, or awareness of like which images you are working with, you are very like on the, you're going to great lengths to be able to work with new technologies, new forms of images, to gather information or knowledge or access to technologies. For example, you worked with the was that INSAR or SAR, the satellite images for your work at the New Visions Onsdag Triennale. I know that you have to go. You have to actively go into other fields, like meet scientists, send requests to gather data or information, or how does that work? Also, as an artist, going in, meeting scientists, I guess mainly, are they cooperative? How's that? Will you say something more about like your history and exchange with those fields?
It's always scary because I really respect people who dedicated their whole life to like one subject. For example, with Oslo University, I collaborated with them for obtaining the images of melting glaciers at Spitsbergen. So it was the beginning of my research on SAR and INSAR. They like spend a lot of time to kind of train me up to understand what it is and how it works. And I am really grateful for that. I collaborated with some like researchers, scientists, activists who was from International Nuclear Group in Vienna, who was using satellites to make a case about illegal construction of nuclear silos on the north of China. Under the sand in the deserts, they've been building nuclear silos there. Yeah, it's just an example of what you could do with it.
Yeah, and I guess when you start looking into it, it becomes so evident that all these technologies are also mainly or very actively involved in warfare, politics, dominations of power, extraction, as you say. But that you go into it, also you have connection, also not just with scientists, but also with like activists or other people actively using these images for other purposes. But you produce a very new kind of images, like that we've never seen before. And before we round off, maybe we should talk a bit more like what we see and your thoughts and concepts behind the creation of these images for the Chronosphere, the globes. Not as a scientist, not as an activist, but as an artist, and you put a lot of speculations and your own narratives and create these different collages, montages, as you say. It really frees up the thinking about these kind of images and this kind of technologies. You want to say more about like your intention, or like why you also go so heavily into like speculation in these images and try to create something new and put something new and different into the world as a opposition to all these other structures working with these images?
For me, the most important is the storytelling. Storytelling could be done through, like, for example, montage techniques. It could be done, for example, through the montage in the exhibition space. We're making some imagination of something that doesn't exist yet. It also, when people see it, maybe it's becoming someone's memory. And then in the long run, maybe it will be this kind of like catalyst of this discourse around like time being like another like element or layer of the like our planet that should be considered.
We didn't mention it before, but if anyone in the audience has any questions before we finish up, you're very welcome to do so. Yes.
Thanks. Thanks for this lovely talk and congrats with the exhibition in Oslo. I was just wondering if you could tell a bit more, like, what do we visually see here? That would be very nice.
Yes, so thank you for the question. Today what we see projected here is the kind of montage of images from Chronosphere, and it's images that represents the micro temporalities. I was trying to think about our planet as it's being seen, like through, and also this like great amount of different speed and dimensions that are kind of coexisting within this kind of almost like scan through planet. So I'm kind of starting with the smallest and then showing like different kind of temporalities that exist, coexist with us, and then it ends with the longest time ever, which is radioactive time, the radiation time, nuclear time.
And it's of course important to mention that this is excerpts from a total film with a lot of other kind of footages as well. Like you rearrange or like reuse some footage from the court in The Hague. You have filmed something in like a real time follow family doing the dishes, and suddenly the air alarm is coming, and you follow them down the staircase, over the courtyard, into the bomb shelter. You have found footage, but this is the more like CGI images also suited for this special viewing today. Any final words about? And there's some bubble-like materials coming up, and this maybe we'll just live comment just this line or this tube-looking structure that like opens up.
I tried to visualize one single beam of radar that's going almost with the speed of light, and then it touches the ground, recording atmosphere, velocity, wind, surface, the highness, how high is the buildings, the movement of people there, and then the same very moment, it goes back with all of this information. It's completely like almost physically unpleasant to not being able to imagine how something that is a time, a signal, how can that hold all of this like scanned information that is so rich and unperceivable for human eye that it's I don't know, it just really points to the kind of the limits of you as a human.
So thank you so much for sharing thoughts about your practice today, Lesia, and thanks to Billedkunst, thanks to you showing up in the audience, and thanks to Vitensenteret. We're going to finish this off by turning down the lights and having a little more full experience of this work before it comes up again and we're done for today. So thank you so much, Lesia. Thank you.